Hey guys, how's it going? Marrow here, and today we're going to be talking about Phase 5 BiS, very last phase of TBC Classic, and this is specifically for Fury Warriors. So if you're an Arms Warrior, I'm sorry, I did not put in the time to make this BiS list for you. I apologize. Anyhow, as you can see in front of me, this is a very fancy looking website. This is actually the new-ish sim that recently came out by Pong, I believe is his name. If I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize. But he worked closely together with Grox and Wingo, who were the owners and maintainers of the last sim that everyone used, Grox's sim. So these two sims, Grox's had been utilized for a very long time. It was trusted, and this sim agrees very closely with Grox's when you have the same settings, which is good. It gives you a lot of legitimacy. Anyhow, as you can see here, what's cool about this is that you can actually have really easy presets. So 6.2K current. This is my gear. This is my 7.7K setup. This is my ZA BiS setup. This is, the absolute BiS, the Phase 5 recommended BiS, and so on and so forth. What's also cool is that you can have all these settings, and you can set them and save them. And so I could say, okay, 6.2K fight at 3 minutes, and then I select my cooldown usage, and so I have really easy toggles between different types of fights. So here I have 7.7K at 3 minutes and 2 minutes, and 6.2K at 3 minutes and 2 minutes as well, with 2-minute cooldowns. So what I did to arrive at this BiS list is I calculated all of these permutations, and then what I did is I took the average of the DPS increase for each item slot, and that's how I arrived at my BiS list. Now, what I will say is I have a Phase 5 absolute BiS list, and I also have a Phase 5 recommended BiS list. There's also a couple caveats with each one of them, so when we get there, I will mention them. But this is important to know that there's a lot of flexibility in this phase, and it will all depend on what drops for you specifically. So that's kind of my piece on that. All right, so without further ado, let's get into it. So this is the absolute BiS list, right? So this is saying, and this is with glaives excluded. Glaives, if you have them, you're going to use them. There's zero question about that. But I'm just going to go for each slot, and I'm going to talk about the absolute BiS piece, and then the recommended BiS piece, and why I think you should go for one over the other, if there's an option, and if there's no option, then why that is. So, okay, really easy start here. Coif of Valyria is the best head slot item in the game. That's it, period. It gives you a 43.2 DPS increase over the baseline, which is Curse Vision. So obviously that's a huge increase. If you don't have Curse Vision, it's an even bigger increase. Overall fantastic item. However, it is highly contested by you, your hunters, and your enhancement shamans. And I personally do not going for items that are contested like that you have an option for, right? Because one of the options for, and what I recommend using, is the Crown of an Asterian. This item is really good as well. It gives you 28.7 DPS increase over Curse Vision, and to boot, it is plate, right? So you're only really contesting this with Fury Warriors, Arms Warriors, or Order Fury Warriors, because if I'm not mistaken, Reds actually want to use the duplicitous guys. So they're that's like one class that can use the plate, and they're just out of the equation as well. So I personally would highly recommend you guys to go for the Crown of an Assyrian. Incredible item, really good. And so yeah, that's kind of my piece on that. This is a 28.7 DPS increase over Curse Vision, while the Coif is a 43.2 DPS increase over Curse Vision. Next up, we have the Hardcorium Choker. This item is crazy. It is so good. 150 armor pen, 58 attack power, 29 rating, haste rating, and a socket with a good socket bonus to that. So just crazy good item. However, it does require jewel crafting. Later on, we'll see why. I would say that if you're not blacksmithing right now for some reason, if you're at a JC, obviously you're gonna go for this. I'm also always considering the fact that you're always engineering. I'm just saying you have one profession, it's either JC or BS. Engineering is always a must. So if you have both JC and BS, keep that in mind. But regardless, Hardcore Choker is a fantastic item. However, as you can see in my recommended list, and just to say, this is a 31.7 DPS increase on a next slot, so it's pretty insane. However, on my recommended BiS list, you will see that I have the Choker of Endless Nightmare, which is from the previous phase. Why is that? Well, this recommended list assumes that you do not have glaives. If you do have glaives, you're likely going to be dropping BS, right? Why is that? Well, BS allows you to get the hard Corium Battle Plate, which is one of the biggest upgrades in the tier, even bigger upgrade than hard Corium Choker, and it's also free because it's just a plate BS item, right? Not many of those are going to be in your raid. So I personally think that if you do not have glaives, you should probably go for the hard Corium Battle Plate if you're still blacksmithing, right? Obviously, if you get Hand of the Deceiver and Mountain Vengeance and you're no longer using Dragon Strike, or right now, if you're no longer using Dragon Strike, I think you should just go for the Hardcore and Battle for the Choker of Endless Nightmare and the Bladed Chaos Tunic. However, keep in mind that while Blade of Chaos Tunic is better than Hardcore and Battle Plate by about 8 DPS, so Bladed Chaos Tunic is a 63.2 DPS increase, Hardcore and Battle Breastplate is about 57.5 DPS increase. So while it is better, it is not significantly better, and this item is going to be incredibly contested. So that is why I personally recommend going for the Hardcore and Battle Plate if you're still blacksmithing. If you've already dropped it, sure, whatever. But yes, if you do not have blacksmithing, if you having the Choker of Endless, having Hardcore Choker and Bladed Chaos Tunic is going to be significantly more DPS than going with Hardcore and Battle Plate and Choker of Endless Nightmare. Now, there is an option for you in Sunwell that's actually a DPS increase over Choker of Endless Nightmare. And that's Clutch of the Mice. However, Clutch of the Mice is a very small DPS increase, especially compared to everything else that we get in Sunwell. It's only a 6 DPS increase over Choker of Endless Nightmares, and not only that, this item is incredible for some other classes like Survival Hunters, for instance. It is not that good for you, and as you can see here, this is something that I'm going to mention. Hit is thoroughly lacking in Sunwell, so you are going to need to make some concessions depending on your gear to get to the right amount of hit, right? If you have a Mooncan in your raid, obviously that's only 6%, and you can just, you can rock this and put in maybe a gem, a hit gem somewhere, and that's actually not a bad thing. Utilizing one or two, one complete hit gem or a hybrid hit gem, that's not the end of the world. It's not gonna make you do like fucking significantly less DPS or anything like that. If you don't have some slots, like for instance, like Neck is a great slot for hit. Ring is a really good slot for hit with Sword Merge Signet Ring. Highly recommend getting this item because it allows you to be a lot more flexible with your gearing options. But that's just something that I'm gonna mention, right? In both setups, you will see that we are below 6% hit, and that's because, well, I think that you should look into your gear and decide, okay, I should probably make this one concession and swap in a piece to get more hit here. Also, again, if you're not rocking a Moonkin in your raid, you're going to need even more hit, and obviously you're going to have to look elsewhere for hit. For instance, things like Leggings of the Immortal Knight, which have like 32 hit. So that's something to keep in mind, basically. Anyhow, sorry, I super lost track. So Hardcore and Choker, again, long story short, really good item. However, if you have GC, if you're still rocking blacksmithing, I recommend just sticking with your Choker of Endless Nightmares. Next up, we have Pauldrons of Berserking. Again, really, really, really good item. However, so if you don't have 4-piece, these are an 18 DPS upgrade. And with 4-piece tier 6, they are 24.5 DPS upgrade. We do have options here, such as the Demon Tooth shoulder pads and also the Mantle of the Golden Forest. However, I do not recommend going for either of these because even though the Demon Tooth shoulder pads are slightly better with 4-piece T6, they are actually not better without 4-piece T6. Not only that, they are highly contested by other classes like Enhancement Shamans and Hunters, and so I would say just stick to the plate option. It will do you good, and when Wrath of the Lich King pre-patch hits, this is actually just going to be flat out better because of the armor as well. So, to me, this is an easy choice across both the absolute and the recommended BiS. Just stick with the Pauldrons of Berserking. Next up is the Cloak of Unforgivable Sin. There's no equivalent to this item. Insane item. 32 haste rating, 72 attack power, a gem slot, 26 agility, just crazy good. Highly recommend putting this item high on your prio if you can, because every single physical DPS in your raid has this as their BiS item. So this is going to be contested by every single physical DPS in your raid. If you do not prioritize this, you will not get it. And this item is a 37.8 DPS increase, which is very significant. Sure, it might not be as big of an increase as some other items that we'll see later in this list. However, those items are much more plentiful and you're gonna get them as long as you stick through Sunwell Plateau progression, right? So that's what I mean. My philosophy for prioritizing gear is gear that is highly contested across everyone and is a single piece of gear like this one deserves to be placed highly on your list. Otherwise, you might never get it. Next up, we have Bladed Chaos Tunic. Again, this item is nuts. 120 attack power, 210 armor pen, 38 crit rating, 3 gem slots, 42 agility. Jesus Christ. As you can see, Blizzard just went off the rails with itemization and Sunwell. Everything is just so good. And yeah, this item is just crazy. It is a 63.2 DPS increase over tier 6 chest. But like I said, we do have Hardcore Battle Plate. So, if you're a blacksmithing, I highly recommend you to keep BS so that you can have Hardcore Battle Plate. This is because it's gonna, again, this item is a lever item, gonna be contested by everyone. You might not get this for a very long time. So, my recommendation is that you stick with Hardcore with BS. You know, this item 57.5 DPS increase over T6 chest. The JC neck is quote unquote only a 31.7 DPS increase over the Choker of Endless Nightmares. So I prefer this item again if you don't have glaives. If you have glaives, sure, you can go for the Bladed Chaos Tunic, or if you're just not blacksmithing, right? Anyhow, if you've already dropped it. So those are kind of my thoughts. But regardless, this item is very good. Just keep in mind that it's going to be insanely contested. Onslaught Bracers, these are just insane. 60 hit rating, 30 crit rating, 30 free strength, 140 armor pen on a wrist piece. Just absolute bonkers. One of your biggest DPS increases in this tier at 52.9 DPS increase, the Delta average. Crazy good item. You do not have options for this. It's this or bust. However, the good thing is that bosses are in Sunwell Plateau drop free tokens from the get-go. So if you're consistently going to Sunwell, as long as you don't have horrible luck, you should get these items. That being said, I would still put them highly on your list because you want to get it first, because it's a huge DPS increase. So keep that in mind. Weapons, I'm going to come back to these later because they're a little bit more complicated. For gloves, the absolute best piece is the Thalassian Ranger Gauntlets. Fantastic item. I mean, really good. At 64.7 DPS increase, However, one, these drop off of Kill Jaden, so that's going to take you a while to get unless you're in the very, top percentile of guilds that are going to clear Sunwell week 1. It's going to take you a while. And 2, these are contested. They're male items. Your shamans are going to want them. Your hunters are going to want them for sure. At the same time, you do have a crafted option in Gloves of Immortal Dusk, right? You should be able to buy almost all of the materials to craft these, except the sun motes. The sun motes are going to have to get in raid. However, I would wager that getting the sun motes is a lot easier than making it to Kill Jaden, killing Kill Jaden, getting this drop, and then, competing for other people with it. Competing with other people for it. So I would say my recommendation is just go with the Gloves of Immortal Dusk. These are going to serve you extremely, extremely, extremely well. And that's just kind of my thoughts on that. And sorry, just to reiterate, these are only a 2 DPS decrease over the Palacian Ranger Gauntlets. So to me, this is a no-brainer. You should absolutely go for Gloves of Immortal Dusk over the Palacian Ranger Gauntlets. And if you're wondering about Borderland Ping Grips, like, these are worse. They're 53.8 DPS as opposed to 64 and 62 for the 2 other pieces. So they're very good, don't get me wrong. Definitely worse, but again, these drop up Kill Jaden. What I would do with these is I would take them whenever they drop, put it in my bank, and then equip it when Wrath of the Lich King pre-patch comes out, because you get armor, you get attack power from armor, and these are going to be fantastic. Until then, actually, you're going to use these into Nax and Wrath of the Lich King, so you do want these just for later, not for now. Next up, we have the Onslaught Belt. This item is just completely bonkers. 40 free strength, good socket bonus, 40 critical strike rating, 26 haste rating, 26 expertise rating. Like, what the fuck? If you don't have 100 deaths, I would probably say this should be like your number 2 item in your list. If you don't have 100 deaths, if I didn't have it, I would for sure put it at number 2 on my list. It is just that good. Even with comparing it against 100 deaths, this is a 56.8 DPS increase. Let that sink in. 56.8 DPS increase over 100 deaths. So if you're using, Red Battle Battle or something like that, this item is just going to be like a 70, 80 DPS increase for you. And highly, 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 highly recommend you putting it very high on your list, because you want to get it first. Even though it drops a lot, you want to get it first. Next up, we have the, again, in the absolute section, we have the Leggings of Immortal Knight. This is one of those items where I could see people going for it, even though there is a very good plate option in Fail Fury Leg Plates, specifically because it gives you a gigantic amount of hit. 32 hit rating, which is, like I said, we have a lot of issue of hit in our current setup. So having this hit from Leggings of Immortal Knight is absolutely essential in some setups. If you don't have a specific combination of gear, you're going to be hurting, right? For instance, if you don't have like a Sword Mage Signet Ring or something like that, you really, really want Leggings of Immortal Knight, basically. But if you just compare the raw DPS increase to Fail Fury Leg Plates, they're actually not that much better, right? If you have the Fail Fury Leg Plates, Leggings of Immortal Knight are a 30.8 DPS upgrade over Divine Retribution, and Fail Fury Leg Plates are a 26.5 DPS upgrade over Divine Retribution. So the gap isn't that huge. However, it affords you a lot of flexibility with your gear, which you might need in the future, right? So that's something to keep in mind. But I do recommend going for the Fail Fury Leg Plates. I think, again, my philosophy when it comes to loot is, if the difference isn't that huge and the item is plate, meaning that you have less competition for it, you should just go with that item, right? It makes for better loot distribution within your guild, and you're probably likely to just get this faster anyways. So I actually recommend Fail Fury Leg Plates over Leggings of Immortal Knight. However, there are situations in which you might need this item just because of how much hit it provides you with. Next up, we have the Onslaught Treads. fantastic item. 47.3 DPS increase over the Dread Boots of the Legion. I will note that this item has 25 hit rating, so if you're hurting for hit, you really want this item. And that's all there is to it. You really want this item. There's no other option for it. Go with the All-Star Treads. Like I said, it's a tier item. It's going to drop eventually for you, as long as you're not extremely unlucky, but you want to get it quick. So I would also prioritize these very highly. Next up, we have the Band of Ruinous Delight. Best ring in the game. Again, not everyone, sorry. Well, everyone actually wants these, but some people want them more than other people. If I'm not mistaken, Reds, it is a DPS upgrade for them, but it's not a gigantic DPS upgrade for them. But anyhow, I'm sorry, Reds, if I'm completely wrong or off base. Anyways, this is to say that this item is amazing. It is a 38.1 DPS increase over Primal Wrath. So, sorry, 39.7 DPS increase over Primal Wrath. So just huge upgrade. And not much to say about that, really. However, what I want to talk about is this second ring slot, because this one you really want Ruinous Delight. However, on the second ring slot, it really depends, right? So, Hardcore Band, first off, this is a crafted item. You just need regular mats and sun motes, and you're gonna get it. So that by itself is amazing, really good. You should craft this. However, the ring slot is probably one of the best slots for us to flex for gear. And while this item is a 15 DPS increase over Storm Rage Signet Ring, there are definitely occasions where I would run Storm Rage Signet Ring over Hardcore Band. So that's something to keep in mind. The second slot, you can either do Hardcore or Storm Rage Signet, depending on how the rest of your gear is looking. If you have enough hit, or if you really need hit. So that's just something to keep in mind. But regardless, Hardcore Band is again like 15 DPS increase over Storm Rage Signet. So if you do have the hit to play around with, go for Hardcore for sure. DST, I hope you have this by now. If you don't, I am so sorry. It's still BiS. It's not replaced by either Shard or Black and Narrow Sliver. So there really isn't much to say there. What I will say, however, is that, well, just look at this item. Black and Narrow Sliver, 54 haste rating. Chance on hit to enter battle trance, during which your melee or range attacks will grant 44 attack power, stacking up to 10 times, so 440 attack power. Expires after 20 seconds, 45-second cooldown. So this item is just nuts. It procs off of everything, and it also obviously benefits, Unleashed Rage. It's benefited by Unleashed Rage. It is benefited by improved Berserker stance, all that kind of stuff. So this item is just absolutely ridiculous. It is a 76.3 DPS increase over Madness of the Betrayer. And to me, there's no question about which item you want the most in this tier. It's Black and Narrow Sliver. Highly recommend going for this if you can. This again is going to be an extremely contested item. So if you got glaives over someone or something, they don't have it yet or something like that, like you're probably not gonna get this first. This is a massive item. I'm not even gonna go into the merit of like, oh, this should be a warrior item or rogue item or hunter item. It doesn't matter. This is an item that you give to someone to reward them because of how they have been to your guild. That's kind of like my thoughts on it. For us, this is the single largest DPS increase in the tier at 76.3 DPS. Absolutely nuts item. There is an alternative-ish that is better than Madness as well. So the Shard of Contempt, which drops from Magister Sturris Heroic, is an extremely good item. Even more so if you're an orc that's going to be using, the KJ weapons, the fist weapons. By itself, and sorry, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but I simmed this all as a human. So Shard of Contempt, compared to Madness, is a 16.2 DPS increase. By itself, same talents, same everything. However, what you can do as a human, if you have your weapons and if you're using a mace and a sword, or a sword and mace, it doesn't matter. What you can do is you can take actually 1 point out of weapon mastery and put that point into improved execute. And when you do that, you actually get an additional 13.5 DPS increase. So in the end, the DPS increase for getting a shard over Madness of the Betrayer is actually around 30 DPS, which is nothing to scoff at. So if you don't have Black and Arrow Sliver, you should definitely have the Shard of Contempt. This is a fantastic item. Highly recommend using it. However, the expertise is wasted when you're fighting trash, so keep that in mind. And you want to equip a different trinket when you're fighting trash with this one. So that's it on trinkets. Also, this is a meme, by the way. You should not get Furodol. At most, I think you'd expect to get Golden Bowl of Golfalos, which again, you probably shouldn't get early before like all your hunters have it. I wouldn't take this over any of my hunters. You know, they're all gonna get this before I do. But this is a very substantial DPS increase at 20.8 DPS increase. Furodol is actually only a 25.5 DPS increase. So the difference between these two isn't really even that huge. So once all your hunters have, you know, their Furodols and their golden bows, then you can get yours. Until then, you're probably gonna rock the Blade of Life's Inevitability. And what's good about this item is it has a socket, so it means that if you are in need of hit, you can play around with it. You can put in a plus 10 hit rating gem in it, and you can, you know, it's a lot easier of an item to work around with. It's like a really nice flexible slot. So this is again only a 5 DPS increase over the Money Longbow, but the flexibility that it affords you is really nice. Now, when it comes to weapons, obviously the absolute BiS are glaives. Sorry, I should have put this here, but absolute BiS glaives, no questions asked. You're gonna want glaives. For the recommended items, though, you have Head of the Deceiver and Mounting Vengeance. Now, Head of the Deceiver by itself is a 39.4 DPS increase over Dragon Strike as a human. So if you're an orc or any other race, this is going to be an even bigger increase. Highly recommend that if you don't have glaives, if you're not in the horizon for you, to get this item. However, if you like your enhancement shamans, and you should because they've been your buds, you know, for all this time, I personally am not getting this until at least one of my enhancement shamans has this. So I'm not getting the first one. I know that for a fact. These are the only weapons that I can use, and especially as a human, as we're gonna see in a little bit, you have other options, which are very good as well. So, Head of the Deceiver, incredible weapon. Mounting Vengeance, also a fist weapon, drops off trash, really good weapon. This is a 35.2 DPS increase over the Blade of Infamy, so it's a little bit less if you're comparing against a Season 3 axe or a Season 3 weapon, but still very good item. One thing that I will note is that there is a bit of a synergistic effect going on when you pair the fists with the Shard of Contempt, right? Shard of Contempt is giving you extra expertise. You're losing expertise because of, you know, no one has fist weapon skill. So if you use Head of the Deceiver and Mounting Vengeance and Shard, you get an additional 61.5 DPS increase over just replacing one of those slots at a time. I hope that makes sense. So there is a synergistic effect going on. If you have any of these fist weapons and you have Shard, they're going to be better than just by themselves, right? So I hope you factor that in. And that's to say that their value increases if you have a Shard of Contempt, which you should because it drops from a heroic. Just tank it, right? And you're going to be fine. However, what I would also like to point out is that humans specifically have a big advantage in Sunwell, in my opinion. So what humans can actually do is they have access to, as a main hand, they can have the Season 4 Slicer, which is very good. Very good weapon. So this on the main hand, this is only a 5 DPS increase over Dragon Strike. However, on the offhand, this is a 24.5 DPS increase over Blade of Infamy, so very big upgrade. However, what I will say is there's an item that's flying under the radar, and that item is the Dragon Scale Encrusted Longblade, which I'm just going to call it Del from now on because it's a mouthful. This item is very, very, very good. The situations in which you would not use this item are flea fights and like trash. Like you probably swap this out for a harder hitting, slower weapon for, you know, bigger whirlwinds. However, this item is incredible in single target, right? 25 haste rating, 108 DPS, and 25 expertise. So remember what we did with Shard, where we took points out of weapon mastery and put them into improved execute? You can do the same thing if you have a Dragon Scale Encrusted Longblade. So by itself, DEL increases your DPS by 25 over Blade of Infamy. However, when you pair that with the fact that you can take a point out of weapon mastery, put it into improved execute, that's actually a 38 DPS increase, 38.5 DPS increase. So very, 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 very good item. Not only that, what you can actually use and what you can actually do is, if you have Dragon Scale Encrusted Longblade and you have the Slicer, what you can do is you can not only do that change with the weapon mastery, you can also change points from improved Berserker stance and put them into sword specialization, right? And what that does is it increases your DPS by quite a bit. So basically, if we have 2 out of 5 sword spec with Season 4 Slicer and DEL, that is a 50.55 DPS increase over our baseline. And that's not factoring in the weapon mastery change. So if we tack that in, that's a 64 DPS increase over our baseline, right? If you go 5 out of 5 sword specialization, then Season 4 sword plus DEL is a 70 DPS increase baseline, and if you tacked in the improved execute change, that's an 85 DPS increase. So very, very significant. And obviously this is contingent on your tanks being able to hold threat, right? Huge caveat here. If your tanks are not good, if your tanks cannot handle the threat, you're not going to be able to run the spec. You're instantly going to die every time. However, if your tanks are good and they're properly consuming, properly gearing, using their haste pots, this is definitely the way to go. And that's kind of like my piece on that. I will say that Muramasa deserves to mention. Muramasa is decent. It's about equal to Dragon Strike. However, it is a slow weapon. So you could have this as a kind of a switch for your DEL. So basically you'd use Muramasa on trash and you'd use DEL on single target bosses. And basically that's how you do it. That's kind of it. I hope that sorry, I kind of rambled a little bit at the end there. I hope that this made sense for everyone. I know that it was a little bit focused, well, it was mostly focused on like humans and all that kind of stuff, but I hope that for orcs and other classes I kind of shed light on some options that you might go with, and I hope that you enjoyed it. I personally enjoy TBC a lot. It was a lot of fun, even though I don't have glaives yet. Fuck you, Blizzard. And I'm really excited to play Wrath. Have never really seriously rated in that. I hope to have more time to make some videos for you guys. And that's it. If you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe. And also, please send down a comment and tell me which piece you're actually prioritizing for Sunwell. I actually want to know that. Besides BNS, because everyone wants this, right? So leave a comment down below. Let me know if you like this type of video, and if you don't, why you don't, and give me some feedback. And I hope to see you next time. Take care and have a good one.